This is a rebroadcast of the Eau Claire School Board meeting. The audio for this program can be heard on WRFP LP 101.9 FM.
Call to order the Eau Claire Board of Education meeting tonight. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Secretary Iverson, have we complied with the Open Meetings Law notification tonight?
Yes, we have.
Thank you. Could you please do a roll call to verify quorum?
Commissioner Spindler,
Here.
Commissioner Johnson,
Here.
Commissioner Cummins is absent, Commissioner Hombach-Boyle,
Here.
Commissioner Duwax is absent, Commissioner Vu,
Here.
Commissioner Zhang.
Here.
Great, thank you. No one signed up for the public forum this evening, so we won't have that. So next is Superintendent's report.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, I'd like to review the upcoming Board of Education events. On March 4th at 4 p.m., there will be a meeting of the Demographic and Trends Committee here at the Administration Building. On March 9th at 7 p.m. at the Administration Building, there will be a meeting of the Parent Advisory Council. And on March 16th, we will have a school board meeting at 7 p.m. here at the Administration Building. Well, it's state tournament time, and we have lots of good news to report about our students. Memorial and North Swim and Dive team finished 6th at the WIAA state meet. Many individual athletes placed very well, including sophomore Paul Delakis, who became the state champion, winning both the 200 IM and the 100 breaststroke. North had 3 boys compete in the state wrestling tournament this past weekend. Mason Phillips took 5th place. He is the first North High School wrestler to place at the WIAA state tournament since 1996. Yeah. Memorial Co-Ed Cheer finished 2nd at the state this past weekend, and the dance team also competed at state. And North's dance team placed 3rd in Division I Kick and 5th in Division I Pom at the WACPC state competition. Morena Severin, a member of the co-op gymnastic team, qualified for state as an individual. Memorial boys hockey team will be making its 6th consecutive trip to the state meet this weekend. And the North Special Angels gave a wonderful performance last week. Memorial will have their show on March 13th at 9:30 a.m. in Memorial's auditorium, and these will be the final performances for Linda Johnson, who has directed the show for 16 years and will retire next year. North and Memorial Juniors will be taking the ACT and the work key assessments this week, weather holding out. So lots of wonderful things going on with our students this week. So, as far as the district is concerned, this year the Eau Claire Area Chamber of Commerce has been celebrating its 100th anniversary through a number of events and commemorations. And last month the Chamber recognized 33 different organizations that have been in the Chippewa Valley for at least 100 years. Among the organizations recognized were Eau Claire County, the Chippewa Valley Newspapers, the City of Eau Claire, Ellie Phillips Memorial Public Library, Mayo, St. Joseph's, and Sacred Heart Hospitals, and our very own Eau Claire Area School District, which has been a continuous school district since July 1889. And the Chamber gave each of the 33 organizations a commemorative plaque. It's ours. which we, yes, which we will proudly display in this boardroom. I think that we are all grateful to the Chamber for including us in their celebration, and we are especially appreciative of their continued support for our efforts in educating the children in our community. And they published this book in which they gave a description of the 33 organizations. So that was a very nice event.
And that's it? That's
That's it.
Great, thank you. It was quite enjoyable listening to about all those who've been in our community for a long time, including our district. For the President's report, the first thing I want to say is I want to thank Blythe for covering us for quite a while now at the school board meetings for the Leader Telegram. She will be moving to a different department at Leader Telegram, Lifestyles, if I understand it right. So we'll be having a new person come, but I just wanted to thank Blythe for her time and her good coverage of us. So, yes. And a new person will start next time, and we're looking forward to working with her, her name is Liz. Just a couple things to mention. March 6th is a WPEN meeting, Wisconsin Public Education Network. So if board members want to go to that, they should attend. Maybe we'll talk about that more later. Okay. And March 18th is the WASB Day at the Capitol, which I'll be attending, and I'll let you know how that goes. It's basically a lobby day. And the last thing I want to mention is the compensation committees will be meeting soon, I think first as an entire committee. So it looks like we're moving forward on that. And I'm not sure if I announced it before, but the 3 board members on the 3 committees are Commissioner Charles Vu, Commissioner Catherine Duax, and Commissioner Chris Hambach-Boyle. So those are the ones that are serving on those 3 committees. And that's it for me for announcements. So let's go on to the student report. And it looks like it's just you for now. Go ahead, but that's great. I'm glad you're here. Go ahead.
My report's kind of lighthearted today. It's all about, I went and talked to a lot of the leaders of the clubs at North, and a couple of them had some things that they'd like me to report about the good things that they've been doing at the schools. The first club that I'm reporting on is SAD, Students Against Destructive Decisions. Over Valentine's Day, the week of that, there was an activism done at North about dating violence, because 1 in 3 teens has experienced a violent relationship, and only like 20% report them. It's very, very uncommon to hear about it, but it's a good thing to get the word out there to say it's okay to report it and you're not alone. So that was a really powerful activism, and I think it went really well. And SAD is also preparing for the mock car crash that's going to happen again this year at North before prom week, to advise against drinking and driving and to promote healthy decision making during prom. The second organization that wanted a little word was our ping pong group. It's a brand new group at North, and it is huge. The first week, I think, had 54 students show up in a hallway to play ping pong after school on a Tuesday. So it was really cool. A bunch of teachers are interested in it. A lot of teachers are helping support that and chaperone it. And right now, I know the club president, Grant Abens, is working on organizing a tournament against Memorial, if they can get a ping pong club together. So that'll be really cool, a good way to bring the schools together.
Hannah, isn't ping pong related to math? At the angles and the shots?
Oh, yeah.
I got it.
That's a good leeway into my next one, actually. Math team competed at the UW-EC competition a couple weeks ago, and they got second place. North's math team did, so that was huge for North, super nice. Today, several students competed in the state competition, so we don't have results on that back yet, but I heard it went well for them. They thought they did well. And they do 5 competitions per year. One of the competitions has 6 different days of competition work, but it's all like in one competition. But yeah, we do 5 different competitions, so that's pretty big. And then last but not least, Key Club wanted me to report that they have more than 80 active students at North participating in volunteer hours. Each student is responsible for completing 10 hours of volunteer work each semester. Nearly all of the students have well over 10 hours, so really gets North into the community and helping out and spreading the good word. So that's my report for today.
Great, great. It's amazing, all the things going on. It really is. So thank you. Thank you. Okay, other reports. I know Policy and Governance met today. I assume it have to be you today, Chris. Go ahead.
Policy and Governance did meet today. We were all present to discuss the voting policy. We looked at the voting policy and also its relation to conflict of interest. And we also looked at the graduation requirement policy. So that's what we did today. Question?
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm not sure if we have any others. Has budget met since our last meeting? Budget committee, has it met since our last? No.
If it did, I wasn't there.
Yeah, okay. Oh, that's right. You were gone. Okay, so sounds like not. Okay, all right. Charter committee? Yes, go ahead.
We met on, we just met and we looked at our contracts again. They've all realigned. McKinley and Montessori have both realigned their contracts with the benchmarks of that the DPI uses for their charter, their public charter schools. We've had some discussion about some of the members of the Charter Choice Programming Committee to attend the STEM conference, the Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math Conference in Cleveland. So that's exciting. And also the Innovative Conference in the Dells is coming up as well. We're continuing to learn about planning grant process, learning about different charter choice school options, and putting together a process by which we can go ahead with this. So we're real excited. It's a real fun committee.
Great, great. I'm glad that really got going. It sounds like it's meshing well. I like that. Okay, and I think that's it for committee reports. So Dan, you'll give us a budget update. All the positive news we've been getting, I'm sure.
Well, the last time that we talked about the governor's budget, we didn't quite know what it was because it was before his February 3rd address. So thought what I would do tonight is give you a little update, pretty much just talking about the fiscal end of it, not getting into some of the more program-oriented pieces of his budget. But for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, just want to run over some stuff as kind of a little review. We know that the revenue limit itself, which is a law that controls how much state aid and property tax a school district may raise, controls 86% of all the money that the school district has to work with. Okay. There's other aid that the school district gets from the state called categorical aid. It's tied to specific programs, and that's 7% of the district's revenue stream. So when you add it all up, the state of Wisconsin, the governor, and the legislature control 93% of all of the money the school district is allowed, keyword is allowed, to raise. Again, the revenue limit, that 86%, if you look at it as a kind of a two-dimensional glass, let's say half of it is state aid, half of it is property tax. The size of this box right here is the revenue limit. Well, we were wondering what was going to happen in the governor's proposal. Was there going to be an increase in the revenue limit, which means that the school district would be allowed to spend more? We didn't know, but in any case, any increase in the revenue limit has to be filled by either an increase in state aid to keep the property tax level or an increase in property tax to keep state aid from going up. That's how it works. We know now that for 15-16, the first year of the two-year biennial budget, the governor is proposing no revenue limit increase, which means the size of the box stays the same as it currently is. He is proposing no general aid increase, which means that the proportion of state aid to property tax will remain relatively constant. But what we didn't know before and what we do know now kind of came as a surprise because this was not mentioned in his budget address, and that was he proposes to eliminate in 15-16 $150 per pupil in that categorical aid that I pointed out a little earlier. That amounts to a little over $1.6 million in terms of less revenue that the school district would receive next year compared to this year. That is a significant amount of decrease. You need to be careful when you listen to people at the state level talk about funding, school funding. This quote comes from the governor in his February 3rd address. Our budget will increase state support for schools by providing more than $100 million annually for the school levy tax credit and more than $100 million in the second year of the budget for equalization aids. If you take that quote and you're not too familiar with school funding, it looks like, whoa, schools are going to be getting about $300 million more to operate with. What are you complaining about, in the schools? Well, the fact is that $319,200,000, not 1 cent of that will be spent by any school district in the state. It is school funding in name only. The state aid increase is in the second year of the biennium. If you go back to that little square called revenue limit with the red and the green part of it, all state aid does is decrease the local property tax. Nothing wrong with that. It's just that none of those dollars get spent. Also, the school levy credit, the school district never even sees that. That aid goes directly to municipalities. Those of you who pay taxes, who pay property taxes, if you look at your tax bill carefully, one of the last lines on there is a subtraction called school levy credit. So it just lowers the tax bill. Again, nothing wrong with lowering taxes, but you need to understand that schools will not spend 1 cent of that money. So be careful when you listen to language that comes from the state. Factors at the local level, we pointed out that there are 2: enrollment, expenditure growth. We showed the history of enrollment. Nothing that we're aware of since the last meeting that would cause us to change our factor and our projection of a 0 increase in enrollment for next year. I did make an adjustment to the expenditure growth assumptions in our projections. A week or so ago, the WERC came out with the base wage increase, the allowable increase in base wage before you have to go to referendum to exceed it, and it's going to be 1.62% for next year. I was using 1.5. Other than that, the adjustments to the benefit rates and a 0 increase in all other costs are the same as you saw at the last meeting we talked about this. So here's the new projection or projections. With a 0 increase in the revenue limit, the aid decrease, which we didn't have factored in before, no enrollment increase, a 1.62% contract salary increase, assuming relatively stable employment picture. The adjustments that we know for benefit rates and a 0 increase in all their costs, kind of hard to read, but that's a little over $5.3 million of expenditures exceeding revenue. Option 2, 0 per pupil increase in the revenue limit. The aid decrease, only here we have 100 FTE enrollment increase. All the other factors the same. Drops that a little bit to a $5.1 million structural deficit. Option 3, the change here is a $75 per pupil increase in the revenue limit, which nobody seems to be talking about these days, but they're not done talking yet. And the 1.62% contract salary increase with a 0 enrollment increase, you can get that deficit down to $4,473,000. And then option number 4, on a good day, if it all goes our way, with kind of things moving forward as they have in the past, $4.3 million. So none of those options are real good options as we look at them now. I am going to introduce into this discussion then what I would refer to as alternate projections. You've seen this once before in the past, in 2011, 2012, when Act 10 took place. The budget then simply could not handle a base wage increase, and so that was zero across the board for all employee groups in that year. If we introduce that into our projections and then adjust the benefit rates based on what we know and hold the other cost increases to zero, well, what impact does that have? Well, here's the impact. Option number 1 drops from 5.3 to 4.2. Option number 2 drops from 5.1 to 4.1, 3, 4.4 to 3.4, and option 4, 4.3 to 3.2. Does have an impact, but it does not solve the budget problem for the district. I think the district is in a situation now that we've been talking about for a number of years. You made significant reductions in staff and in about everything you could other than touching the instructional programs in 2007, 2008, and in 2009, 2010. The years since 2009, 2010, the district has been able to make its way through those difficult years. But I think it's rapidly approaching, if not at the point where you're going to have a referendum to fund operational costs. You know, and I think many more school districts are getting to that point right now. I wouldn't be surprised to see this April and perhaps April of 16 record numbers of school districts going out for referendums to exceed revenue limits. So that is where things stand with the most recent update. Again, I want to stress that this is not an expenditure-driven problem. You've seen these graphs before. We compare the districts shown at the bottom: Appleton, Green Bay, Kenosha, La Crosse, Madison, Oshkosh, Racine, Sheboygan, Waukesha, and Wausau, along with the state average, and we look at it 3 different ways. In terms of our administrative cost per student, the yellow line is Eau Claire. The gray lines are all of these other districts, and the red line is the state average. You can see where we rank on an administrative cost per student. If you look at direct instruction cost per student, that is teachers working directly with kids, you can see a very similar picture. Compared to the comparables, the district is very low on a cost per student basis. And if you take total instruction costs, factoring in all of the media folks, the psychologists, social workers, those folks that also serve the needs of kids, although not directly in a classroom, again, the Eau Claire School District is pretty much towards the bottom of the pack. So revenue-driven problem, not an expenditure-driven problem. And then just to keep it alive, we are going to have to make some changes in Fund 80. There's no question about it. We will be moving some of these costs back into the general fund as a result of the Department of Public Instruction's clarification of rules on what can be in Fund 80. And that certainly will not help the problem. So with that, you know what I know, at least as of today, and as things change, we will certainly keep you informed.
Okay, thanks, Dan. I appreciate it. I think that's a good segue into the legislative report.
Here I am again. Okay. I ran off the legislative update from wasb.org. Go there, because I'm not going to be specific on any of these, but just tell you what's popping up as far as some of the hearings set in Madison. We just completed the accountability hearings in the Senate and the Assembly, and the right to work in the Senate, and it's ongoing. It's going on right now on Wisconsin Eye. I was watching it today. Got my mom hooked on it. She's in her 4th hour of watching Wisconsin Eye. She's almost 90. So here, yeah, I kind of laugh too. Legislative update. There's a hearing set on bills related to school lunchrooms and allowing off-duty former police to carry firearms on school grounds. Next one, Senator Farrow to introduce bill to pause state report cards educator effectiveness requirement for 1 year. As U.S. House debates ESEA authorization, DPI applies for the renewal of the waiver. So that's the legislative update. What I did bring to hand out tonight are two things from WASB. I went and found the Wisconsin Association of School Boards state budget provisions, and they did a comparison between what the DPI budget proposal was, what was in the governor's budget, and WASB's position. So I thought it'd be kind of an interesting read for people to look at. It goes over equalization. It goes through everything in the budget related to schools. So you may have that information and read it and share it. And the other thing that Hannah so nicely handed out for me was the recent legislative alert that we as board members received from WASB related to vouchers. And you can read that on your own as well. Every day there's something new, so go there and become aware and get to know what's happening. I think the most important thing, no matter how you feel on any of this stuff, is to contact your legislators. So if you go to the legislative alert on the second side, it goes through who to contact, where to look it up, sample letters and everything for you to look at and to be a resource. And we hope you do that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate that. Okay, so now we're at the consent agenda. Not many items on it this time. So for the consent agenda, the board will consider approval of the items unless they've already been given background material, discussed it before. So these will be acted on with one vote without discussion, unless a board member asks to poll any of them, and then we'll discuss them separately. So I would consider a motion to approve the minutes of the February 16th, 2015. I would consider a motion to approve the minutes of the closed session February 16th, 2015. And I would consider a motion to approve the Human Resources Employment Report. Do I have a motion to approve?
So move.
We have a motion from Commissioner Hamad-Boyle. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Zhang. Okay, I think we can just do a voice vote on this. All those in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
I abstain.
Abstain. Okay. So we have, how many do we have here? 4 in favor, 1 abstention. Thank you. And so you wanted to make an announcement, Superintendent? Yes. Go ahead.
So with your approval of the consent agenda tonight, you approved the retirement of Chris Dimmock, the Director of Elementary Education. Chris, stand up. So So as I said with Mr. Vandewater's retirement announcement, we will have much more to say about you, but we did want to acknowledge that you were on the employment report tonight, and you still have several more board meetings with us.
Great. Thanks for all your service, Chris, for over the years. Okay, so next we have individually considered resolutions. So we have before us a resolution regarding the governor's budget proposal. You just saw some of the numbers for us. A number of school districts have passed a resolution about the budget, and there's one that's very similar to pass in many other, several other districts out here and many others throughout the state. The whereases list basically the effect of the budget on our district and other districts. So those list the reasons for this resolution, and at the bottom, if we page down just a little bit, it says, you can see, the audience can see, be it resolved that the Eau Claire School District Board of Education strongly encourages the governor and state legislature to revise the governor's budget to restore school funding in the biennium 2015-17 to educationally adequate levels, to include no decrease in year one anticipated revenue, which you saw from Mr. Vandewater's update. We would get a decrease, while also providing for inflationary revenue increases in both years. So this is the resolution before us. First, any discussion from board members? Commissioner Johnson.
I move that we approve this
I
resolution.
second.
So we have a motion to approve it from Commissioner Johnson, a second from Commissioner Hambuck-Boyle. It's on the table. Discussion about it. Questions, comments, concerns? Okay. I assume there are no concerns. I want to thank Superintendent Hardebeck for bringing that to our attention. I think it was first in River Falls. Perhaps you saw it, to suggest we do something like this. I think it's a great idea. Often we do things in committee first as a board committee, and then we bring it to the board as a resolution, but we feel that this is pretty timely, that we should make a statement. So unless there's any further comments, I'll call a vote on this. Yes.
I just went to look at the list. The list is growing. You can go on wasb.org and look at that as well, because they're keeping a list.
Commissioner Johnson.
Do we need to read it?
I don't know. We read policy for first readings. That's a good question. Do we normally read the entire resolutions? I don't. It's varied.
You may want to read it.
Okay, I'm happy to do that. I'll just go ahead and read it. I've got it in front of me. It'll be easier for me on paper than on the screen. Yeah, I'm over 50. I got to start wearing glasses at some point. All right. So resolution of the Eau Claire Area School District Board of Education, Eau Claire, whereas Governor Walker has proposed a $150 decrease per student in public school funding for 2015-16, whereas this decrease results in $1,652,850 base cut to the Eau Claire Area School District, whereas in addition to the year one decrease of $150 per pupil, Governor Walker's budget plan also includes no revenue per pupil increase, whereas when factored together, base cut plus no inflationary revenue cap increase, the overall results in reductions in educational opportunities for public school children in Eau Claire is compounded upwards toward $5.2 million. Whereas, although the governor indicated in his budget address on February 3rd that school revenues remained essentially flat, his budget plan actually imposes $150, which is $127 million statewide, cut in the per pupil special categorical aid in the first year of the biennium. Whereas this $150 per pupil categorical aid was in the 2014-15 state budget base and expected in each year of the 2015-17 biennium to minimally keep pace with inflation. Whereas, even though the governor proposes to add about $142 million, which is about $165 per pupil, to the per pupil categorical aid in the second year of the biennium, the net result is a cut of approximately $135 per pupil, which is $112 million over the biennium. Whereas, in addition to the $142 million in the per pupil categorical in the second year of the budget, the governor also proposes spending $211.2 million in increased school levy credits, which is $105.6 million in each year, and $108 million in increased general aid with no corresponding revenue increase. Therefore, this $319 million is school funding in name only. It simply flows to taxpayers as property tax relief, and schools cannot spend one dime of it on the educational needs of their students. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Eau Claire School District Board of Education strongly encourages the governor and state legislature to revise the governor's budget to restore school funding in 2015-17 to educationally adequate levels, to include no decrease in year one anticipated revenue, while also providing for inflationary revenue increases in both years. And then we have in witness thereof of the board members who would be here. Commissioner Johnson.
Will the governor and each legislator who has portions of the Eau Claire Area School District get one of these personally mailed or delivered to them?
Yes, we can do that. And WASB is also collecting all those throughout the state, and I'm sure they will use it for the lobbying efforts. So, Commissioner Hambuck-Boyle.
And I just have to say again that our families that are part of the Eau Claire School District family should voice their opinion as well to their legislators.
Okay. All right. I think it's a pretty strong statement and should be made. So how about we make a vote on this? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, passes unanimously with obviously two board members not here for it. So we will have the board members who are here sign this, and then we will send those off. Thank you very much. Well, I don't have a clean, good copy, so we'll get one around. You have one? Okay, so you could send it around and we could sign it. Thank you. Yeah. So next on our agenda was the Wisconsin Public Education Network, WPEN membership. It was something that Commissioner Hamburg-Boyle had proposed as an agenda item. And last time we had a discussion about it, and if you remember right, we left it as if any board members had questions, they should send it to the superintendent, and then we would answer those. And actually, I don't think anyone sent any questions. We answered the questions that were asked at the board meeting last time. And why don't
I move that we join WPEN.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve the WPN.
I second it.
We have a second, so it is on the floor. I just want, just for public disclosure, what the answers to the questions were, because they were sent to us. Let me just summarize them quickly. Who would represent the ECSD at WPEN meetings? And basically the answers, we could decide this collaboratively. The board could appoint someone. We could decide on how to appoint someone, how to do that. Another question was, how can we observe a meeting of WPEN? Well, they're throughout the state, but we have one March 6th on Friday to attend if anyone wants to observe one.
I got it arranged to be in Eau Claire for that reason.
Right, thank you. So that's from March 6th, noon to 2, if any board members want to attend that. And one other question was, how does the Board of Education stay nonpartisan? Well, one of the answers is this group is nonpartisan. It is not a partisan organization. It's set up to advocate for public schools and public education. So that's the answer to that one. And will our community support this? Well, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if anyone knows, but we're here to represent the community, so you have to decide when you vote if you think this is something the community would support. So those were the questions. For me, personally on this, we're a member of a number of organizations, the Chamber, WASB, some others, so you have to decide if this is something we should join. So any comments, questions? We've got the resolution on the table. Commissioner Vu.
This is a 1-year contract at a time.
Commissioner Hamburg-Boyle?
That's how it's set up right now. It's just starting to grow, and so that's how it was set up, I guess, for now.
So essentially yearly dues. You can renew or not. So one thing about approving this, it's not totally clear. Was the sense of the board that we want to approve this each year, or just we continue unless we say no? Because we automatically, we automatically join Chamber every year, for example, and WASB every year. Would this be of that same nature, I guess, is one question I would have. Any sense on that? Commissioner Zhang.
I think since it's very new and we're going to be very new members to it, I would feel more comfortable if we revisit it next year to see if it has benefited us.
Okay, so you would want to modify the motion to say essentially approval to join WPN for this year. Is that accurate? Okay. Those who made the motion. So, okay, so that would be an amendment. We could make a formal amendment, or I don't know if it's just amenable to those who made the motion to do that. You're staring at me, Wendy.
I don't have an opinion.
I know people question when things start new. I guess when I looked at it, I thought it's a way right now for us to grow a voice in support of public education. I can't predict where the WPN will go. I've talked with many people that are part of it and are growing this, this coalition, they call it. And I'd be okay with a year because I think people need to learn about it some more. So I'd be fine with that.
I will accept the friendly amendment.
Okay. Okay, good to be informal. Technically, there's no such thing as that, but that's good. We're going to do that. So the motion before the board then is to join WPN for 1 year, pay dues for 1 year. Any other discussion or comments or questions about it? Yes, Commissioner Boyle.
Also, too, you know, as a board, we make this decision. It's the WPEN is there for the community as well. So the meeting this Friday is open to other people that are interested in supporting public schools. So I just wanted to say, and maybe we want to say when and where it is.
Okay, glad. I didn't realize that
Yeah.
it was for anybody. So, okay, so I don't have it in front of me here. I don't think.
I do.
Is it? It's 12 to
12 to 2 at the Chippewa Valley Museum large meeting room.
Okay, great.
Okay.
12
On
to 2.
Friday.
Yes, Friday, March 6th. Okay, good. Should we call a motion? Okay. All right. This requires expenditure, so I think we better do a roll call vote on this one.
Commissioner Zhang,
Yes.
Commissioner Spindler,
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson,
Yes.
Commissioner Humbug-Boyle,
Yes.
Commissioner Vu.
Yes.
Okay, motions pass unanimously. Thank you very much. We'll see how it goes, and we'll have to perhaps next time or figure out someone to appoint formally to attend. Okay, so now we will adjourn to committee. We have a post-secondary data report, and Jim Schmidt will be doing that for us. You have a PowerPoint or something, Jim? Okay. All right, thanks.
How do I get to that? Nice, okay. Very good, thank you. All right. Good evening. 2 years ago, we did a very similar report to this, and so you're going to see an update from some of the data we shared with you 2 years ago about where our students go. Quite a few years ago, when I talked with the board, I mentioned how we have a data cliff when our students leave the district. So this is our opportunity to try to look beyond when our students are here. But we also have more data than we had in the past. In the past, we just knew how many of our students our graduates were going to post-secondary, were retained, and were completing degrees. But we now actually can tell a little bit more about some demographic data about students of color, students with disabilities, English language learners, et cetera. So we have an opportunity to dig a little bit deeper than we did last time. So I think you might find some of this data pretty interesting. So the data, I'm a parent of a senior, and so I just got in the system myself with my daughter. I think you're doing it too, the FAFSA. Right, and as soon as you start enrolling for financial aid, you're in the system. They're tracking you. So Student Tracker is really, through the financial aid system, tracks students as they make their way through post-secondary experience. And what happens is we take our data based on our graduates, and we send it to them, and we have all the characteristics that we're allowed to share with them. They have all the data that we put in, our children put in when they go to post-secondary, and if there's a connection, we can actually follow those students. We're actually able to follow quite a few students, and we'll give you an update on what that looks like in just a moment. The other piece is our local military. They've been really great about trying to provide us data because the students that are in the National Student Clearinghouse data does not cover the military, so we're going to dig into that as well. So Student Tracker is part of the Institutes of Educational Sciences, and it is, like I said, collects for over 3,300 colleges. So about 96% of students that go to post-secondary are in the system. Now it's important to recognize it's not 100% of students in there. So already we're not going to capture every student. Also, we're only measuring right now our graduates. So we have about a 4-year graduation rate of around 86 to 87%. We have a 6-year graduation rate of about 94%. So really, when those 6-year graduates are in at that 94% of the students, we're really following those students. So 94% of our kids. Of those that might go to post-secondary, they don't all go to institutions, but most of ours do go to institutions that are part of the system. So some of our challenges in keeping track of our students when they leave is that they go to a non-participating institution. Some students do what's called a FERPA block. It's the they don't want their data shared outside of the immediate need for financial aid. Sometimes there's a mismatch, so we match students not through social security number or anything like that. Date of birth, name, graduating high school, and between that data and their data, that's how they try to make the connection. Sometimes there's a miss. Sometimes something gets entered a little bit odd, and a JOHN and a JON doesn't match, and so the student doesn't end up looking like they came from us. Also, I said the military doesn't participate. And the other one is that a student may not actually enter a post-secondary institution. So our Armed Services, again, is our other resource. They measure seniors directly enrolling in all other past graduates, but one of the issues that we have with them is that they don't include the reserves, the National Guard, and they don't identify them by graduating class. So we have a tougher time. We know that about 1.5% to 2.5% of our students on any given year are going into the military. And so we don't always have we can't usually say the class of 2006 has this many. We can try to narrow it down, and we get pretty good in some cases, but we know it's in that 1.5% to 2.5% range. So the tale of two graduating classes, and the only reason why we put this data in like this is just this is the two edges of the data we can collect. We've been able to enter data. Oh, you bet. We've been able to enter data into their system from our 06 graduates all the way up to students last year, and you can see how our students have changed over that time. You'll also notice that there's no graduation rate here. There's no graduation rate because the DPI changed the graduation rate calculation, so the way kids were determined in terms of graduation rate from the 06 class is different than now. But you can see we become a more district of more color, quite a little bit smaller in terms of disabilities. The poverty rate has grown significantly. This is actually across the state. I was talking with the district leadership team this morning. Pretty interesting graph by DPI looking at rural areas, and there's this, unless you're in the Hudson, Fox Valley, and the Milwaukee-Madison corridor, the economic disadvantage rate has increased pretty quickly in the last decade. And then our English proficiency has stayed pretty constant and actually increased just a little bit. So those are the ends, the bookmark ends. So let's look at 06. And we looked at 06 last time, but we know a little bit more about them this time. So the data I'm going to show you actually has more colors than 3. But we're going to try to chunk this so that you don't get overwhelmed by the graph that's going to come here. But this first group, now again, these are the kids that graduate in 06. This is 8 years out. And so someone might say, well, why would we care about 8 years out? That's quite a ways, but we still are graduating kids with their first degree 8 years out, which is, they're getting it, so at least they're getting there. 56.6% of those graduates actually that are in the system. So again, not every one of our students was a graduate. Not every graduate's in the system. So of the students in the system, 56.6% of them have been identified as earning an initial degree. 7.8% of those students are still enrolled in going towards that first degree, 8 years out. And 35.4% of them are not enrolled or not graduated or in the military. Now we know with that first group in 2006, we knew that it was right around 1.3%. So this is a pretty significant group that's not there. This doesn't mean that they're not doing anything. We're going to dig a little bit into them in just a moment. This is the student tracker graph that you're going to see a lot more. So these two colors, my graphs weren't perfectly matched. These two colors make up this one. So these two are, this is 13.9% of these students were never, ever, ever in the system. And then this 21.5, I gotta get my readers out, 21.5% of them, I'm showing my age, were at one point in the system, but they're no longer enrolled. So they were engaged at one point, but they didn't finish. So we've got those two groups make up the 35.4. Again, your military is going to be 1.3% of this. And again, a few students, just quite frankly, they may be in an institution that's not part of the system. This 7.8% right here, this is those currently enrolled. There's 3 tight boxes here. The first one, this blue one, is they have returned back to school, but they stopped out in the middle. So they came, they left, and they came back. So the ones in orange, that's 2.3%. The ones in orange here, and by the way, this will be in board docs, as some of you might have it up there right now. The 5.1%, those are ones that are retained. They're still there. They're still in school. And the 0.4%, now remember, 8 years out, 0.4% of the students are new to college. 0.4% of the graduating class, 8 years out, is new to college for the first time, at least in the system. So they eventually come around, some of them. All right, and then the 56.8% that actually graduated. So now we're going to pull this away, and then you can see over time, this is going back in time, that same graduating class. So this is their first year, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth full year. We tend to look at 6 years is a really common, both in high school and post-secondary. It's a very common benchmark to look at 6 years. And you'll see at 6 years, we're right around 50%. But even in the last 2 years, when we get past this benchmark year of 6 years out, we still pull in, almost over 7% of our students of that class, still in years 7 and 8. So those are pretty amazing numbers in terms of what our graduates look like. So what I'm going to show you right now, and again, this is your retention group. They stuck around. These are your new to college, the green ones. And then your blue ones here are, they stopped, so someone stopped out, and then now the blue, they're starting to come back. And I think I left, and then of course our yellows are, they were here, but they left the system. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to show you the classes 07, 08, 09, et cetera, all the way up to 13. We don't have 14 because they haven't finished a year yet. But so each one of these, you're going to see a year drop off here. Now, one of the things that actually happens to the data over time is if we look back at what this class looked like 2 years ago, this number actually improves because the data gets cleaner over time. We have a chance to kind of capture kids. So sometimes you look back at some of these graphs and we actually see those changes. So this is the class of 07, 08, 09, 10, 11, 12, and then the current class, or the class of 13, the one that most, the most recent class that finished a full year. But those graphs tend to look very similar. So there's a pattern there that we see. We're going to show you a few other patterns as well. One of those is where our students most commonly go. And one of these, our number one is Chippewa Valley Technical College. It is our most common institution that our students attend. And then it would reason to believe that you could understand or guess that Eau Claire would be second. And then we start branching out. There are no privates in this one. But they start to show up once you get past the top 10. But obviously the public institutions, both in state and in our reciprocity ones, are gathering quite a few of our students. So this is the part that's new, is our demographic data. And so we're going to show you a variety of things, but what I'm going to get up right away is what I'm not going to show you, and that is our students that are on reduced lunch status, free and reduced lunch. The National School Lunch Act disallows us from providing or from doing any work with students that are free and reduced, basically our economically disadvantaged students, unless it's for a federal report or a state report that has been required by the federal government. And so this is a brief graph. This is just part of a graph from the eligibility manual. But for local education programs, which this is a local education decision to do this report. If I was mandated by the federal government, that'd be a different game. But because this is local interest to us, we'd have to ask for the parental consent of every single parent in that system, all 41.8% of them. And if they didn't all approve of it, then I'd be keep telling you that this is only the data of those who are willing to share it. So you can see that it's a pretty high standard to meet. So the one piece of data you won't see here is economic disadvantaged. Because again, we'd have to take that data, share it with Student Tracker, and we're not allowed to do that. The data we can share with you, we'll start off with the first one, the male-female data, this is looking at the graduates. So this is graduating class of 07 all the way up to graduating class of 2014. And this is looking at how many of them walk across the stage. And by the way, when I talk about graduates, I'm not talking necessarily about the graduating class, like the ones that grew up and all turned 18 together. This is any kid who graduated in any of these years. So if you didn't finish and you did McKinley, you did the additional, you're going to be a graduate that year, so you'll be in that group. So this is looking at our males are in the green and our females are in the more purple color over time of the percentage of them that go directly into school in the fall after they graduate. Nationally, you can see females were right around the national numbers, 71.3 and 61.2. That was back in 2012. What I'm going to show you right away then is what happens 1 year after that. That number jumps nearly 10%, and it jumps for almost every group. So when we look at how many enroll for the first time in 2 years, and we know that one of our most common institutions to gather those students up is CVTC. So just to take a trip back, there's first year, second year, we pop up, we're already 10% up. So some kids, they don't go there right away, but they get there in the first 2 years. That's male and female. Let's see. Oh, this is the return. So this is the enrollment. This is the retention data. Male and female, how many come back after year 1? So you can see those lines are a little bit closer than the other lines. And then finally, this is going way back. How many completed a degree within 6 years? And so this is our female line, and this is only 2 data points. So don't get too excited about the angle of the slope on those two. But you can see a comparison between those 2 groups. We also have, this is fun. They're Spaghetti Junction. We also have data on race and ethnicity. First of all, when you see 0, don't panic. 0 means 1 of 2 things. First of all, we didn't capture race and we didn't capture ethnicity data until the year with this first group 08. The second is anytime there's a 0 just means that there were not enough students to report. So if the numbers are too small, they're not going to put it in there because then you can start to identify students. So unfortunately, some of these pop up from 0 and it looks like there's this dramatic moment. You kind of have to try to ignore that, but this is the way the graphs come to me from National Student, from the Clearinghouse. So we have on here, I'll just trace the green line here is our Asian student, our Asian population. And you can see it starts around above 70 and then it oscillates in between basically that 60 to 70 area. Nationally, that's an 80.5%. Our students that are white, that's this line right here, this little, it looks pink to me, but it looks a little darker red up there. And nationally, that our numbers are hitting between that 60 to 65, and nationally it's 65. The blue line is our Hispanic Latino, and that line is 70.3 nationally. Ours is 50, but you'll see a lot of oscillation because our population is very small relative to, so you're going to see more variance there. The threshold, by the way, for this clearinghouse is 10 students. Typically, thresholds tend to be 20 or even 40. When you get down to 10, you'll see a lot of jaggedness to your lines. The orange line is our Black or African American students. We are at 40 down. This number gets below 30, but going to that 30 to 40 area nationally, it's 56.4. And then our last 2 lines are over here. 2 or more races is this purple line right here. And let's see, this is American Indian or Native, and there's no data except for this 1 year where it was up around 40%, and there's not a national number for us on that one. So we have this is again coming right out of high school. The numbers all jump up at least 10% within 2 years. And then when we start to look at who returned, the retention rate, the numbers are so small we really only have data this 1 year for Black or African American students, but really our Asian student population and our white population really oscillates in that 80 to 90%. And then if we look at the students who completed a degree, this wasn't really 0, there just wasn't enough data to report, but you can see 50% for the students that are white. Asian is around 45 down to 40, and again this is looking at 2 graduating classes, and then the Black students are this one is a 40 and that's a 30. So we're interested to see this data. We've actually gone back. We know we have data in their system from 2006. We've actually made a request to get that 2006 data because once you start seeing 3 points, that's you can see a little bit more of a trend that way. These are students with disabilities coming right out of school. So green is students without disabilities. And then the purple line here is students with disabilities. If we go 2 years out, we notice that those numbers jump again. These are the retention rates. So your retention rate, if you do not have disabilities, is somewhere between 80 and 90. But if you do have disabilities, oscillates all the way from 50 up to 70%. And this is the completing a degree within 6 years. So if you do not have a disability, if we're looking at these 2 graduating classes, you're about 50% chance of completing a degree within 6 years. If you have disabilities, your percentages are more, right, just above 10%. English proficiency, students that are identified in ELL. Not ELL is the green, and then our English language learners rate of going into school right after high school is the purple line. You'll see, get ready for the 10-point hop 2 years out. Those numbers jump up. This line actually jumped more than 10 in many cases. Again, ignore the jagged, pay attention more to the points on top. These are students, this is the retention rate. So these retention rates are actually quite close to one another. Students that are English proficient versus non-English proficient. And then this is the completion of a degree within 6 years. And again, we need that third year just to see what that trend looks like. This is actually this is really, really intriguing data. The reading is interesting. The math is really even more intriguing. What happened here is they started a system, and so you kind of got to ignore everything left of this spot. So it really picks up in 2012 for us. But this is looking at the student enrollment first fall out of high school based on your 8th grade WKCE reading score. So if you scored advanced on your WKCE reading score, you were 80% likely to go to college right out of high school. If you were proficient, this number falls down to just above 60%. And if you're below proficient in reading, this number is just above 30%. And you can see then how the numbers follow up from there. Now those are really interesting pieces of data until you look at the math numbers, because they're even, this number is even higher. If you score advanced in math in 8th grade WKCE, you're 90% likely to go to college as soon as you come out. 70%, so these numbers are almost 10% higher when you come out. So if you know Agenda 2017, the post-secondary readiness, 3rd grade reading, 8th grade math, ACT, and so 8th grade math, this is a pretty tight indicator. It gets more interesting than that though. If we start looking at credits that you take in high school, this is a line for students who take 8 semesters or 4 full credits in high school math. If you take 4 full credits of high school math, you're in that 90%. This one drops a little bit down here to about 85%. The orange line is unreported, and again, these are students that fall outside the system. But you really want to look at the green line. These are our students who have less than 4 credits of math. You are 2.5 times less likely to go to college if you have less than 4 credits of math in our system.
Of course, we don't know that taking math causes college, or if the intention of going to college causes math.
Right. I'm just saying if you follow those students.
Correlation versus
correlation.
causation.
Yep. We're not saying causal. We're just saying if we look at the students that are there, there's a 2.5 times difference between those who go for 4 credits of math versus those that don't.
Could I ask a question about the unreported part? Are those the ones that, for example, could have been free and reduced that didn't get in the system? Is that what?
Yeah, there's a variety. Yeah, and full numbers.
Right, because those are the ones that they would not have access to primarily.
Yeah,
correct.
let me. I can actually give you what the exact number is. I was getting ready for this one. I knew someone might ask this. You all get to sit and. Oh, here we go. I get excited just about any graph I can look at. So this was the credits for math, right?
Well, the last 3 had unreported. Just kind of curious who were in those.
Yeah, but I can actually give you the end value on that. Here we go. Yep. Okay, so in 2011, that unreported is 36 students in that cohort. So yeah, you're looking. That's a small enough number. You're looking at kids that aren't in the aren't getting matched up in there. Correct. Yeah. I just want to get a sense of the scale if we're talking hundreds or.
Right.
3 dozen.
Right.
All right. So just to summarize, over half our students have earned a post-secondary degree within 8 years. We're about half of them are getting there in 6 years. 87% of them have had some sort of post-secondary experience, and 12.4% are not showing up in our data. At least 7.8% of that group is the first 7.8% number. As you start climbing up, it's not 7.8% of 12.4, but 7.8% of the graduates are still engaged in some sort of learning 8 years out. And this is the class of 2006, so we're talking 8 years ago. So 7.8% are still engaged. If we look at trends over all the classes, we see that there's that 10% jump roughly from the first fall through the second year. So students, we're seeing a lot of students coming to us, coming into the system. Graduating class for us is ballpark, 800 kids. So 10% is about 80 around there. So if you think in terms of that. And then the performance on the grade 8 assessment really predicts the likelihood of attending post-secondary, that grade 8 benchmark. And then if you're taking at least 4 credits, you're 2.5 times more likely to attend a post-secondary than those with less credits. Again, we're not saying causal, it's just the connection between them, and we see it over time. This, by the way, is data that ACT has had several reports on many institutions. This isn't unique data, but it's interesting to see it play out with our students. So that's a chunk for you to think about. There's going to be a quiz about all those colored lines and what they were doing.
Okay. Any questions for Jim or comments? Commissioner Zhang.
Do you know the ratios between boys and girls that are in our school district right now? Because it would seem to me if it's about 50-50, we need to start working on our boys to, get them.
You have to go back to the opening of schools report. If I remember right, we were just a little bit higher female, weren't we? Yeah. Yeah. What's that? It was close, though. Yeah.
Commissioner John, this is a trend, though, that we see across the nation. Girls, females going into college in higher numbers and finishing in higher numbers than males.
Yes, I understand that. So this is a national issue that we have to deal with.
Commissioner Vu.
I'm a little bit disturbed that there are 35% not graduate and not enroll. What can we look more into that?
I give you a lot. Which do you remember?
The data you showed earlier, it says 35% are not enrolled and also not graduate.
Oh, this group right here? Yep. Yeah, right.
Our goal is all
Yeah.
ready for post-secondary education. And right now we are looking at this, and I understand we're looking at 2007 information, but looking ahead, how can we anticipate now to improve?
And that's part of the reason why I wanted to show you, why I wanted to do this experience with you. We went from this one to show you that the patterns are pretty consistent, right? So you're seeing some consistency, which is predictable, but creates a challenge to overcome, because we've got some things in place that are, that are supporting that type of data. It's difficult also how much you can control 8 years out. So obviously the preparation though is something for us all to consider.
Yeah, my question was similar. The over half earn a post-secondary degree within 8 years. That seems low to me, but I'm not quite sure what to expect. But it would seem to me what's important partly is, and I know we do this to some extent, is we have certain colleges that most of our students, CVTC for example, attend, and it seems like the more we can smooth that transition and the more we can partner with them, stronger partnerships, the better we'll off will be.
CVTC has some interesting data they'll share about students that are direct and never change versus students that come into them from another program. And if I remember right, and Tim, you can correct me, I believe it's about 60% of the students that come in with a plan and don't change graduate. If you come in and change, your percentage of finishing is around 40%. So you have about already you have a greater probability if you come in with a game plan versus not having one. And sometimes some of that game plan, I know in particular talking with their counseling staff, if the students don't have if they are not scoring high enough on their entrance exams, they can't get in the program they want, so they switch to another program, and so it's not something that they're passionate about, and so they may their likelihood of finishing is less.
Commissioner Hammock-Boyle.
Jim, or do we get more data and more input with the programs of study when you're able to have those conversations with kids and families?
You mean about the reasons behind some of this? I haven't actually been. Actually, Tim, have you been? I know one of you two is in the. Dr. Hardebeck or Tim on the programs of study committees right now.
So can you be a little bit more?
When you look at that data, we've upped the conversation with families because of programs of study and the fact that we're expanding them and that information is there and they can kind of see what that pathway or journey kind of looks like or whatever. I was just wondering if that's one of the areas that will impact this over time. Maybe that's my question.
So I think that's a good point, that the program of studies were only articulated 2 years ago. So we're going to have a little bit of time to see how students progress through those programs of study and if they stick with them, because they have the option to go into a program of study and then change. So, we'll have to do a little bit of tracking on that. But the programs are so new.
But
we
we're
don't
able
have a
to
lot
keep
of trend
that. Are we able to keep that data? Mm-hmm. Oh, cool. That'd be cool stuff.
I do know early when I was involved in that in my other role, the idea was to get students to think about that selection of a program early and make changes in high school so that you have less of the changing going on when you're in college.
I realize too, kids will change. I don't think a program study should be in concrete either. I mean,
and the whole purpose of that is to give them a little bit of opportunity to experiment. So it's not unusual for them to be in one program and then switch to something else based on their interest.
Commissioner Johnson.
So how do we use all of this information to inform what we do and make changes to what we do?
Well, we think that, looking at those indicators in terms of the assessments for the benchmarks for Agenda 2017, particularly for 8th grade mathematics, seems to be an indicator of success later in college. And the idea of having a rigorous math program is certainly something I think that the data tells us is important. And we know that, from the other research that we've done, that those benchmarks at third grade reading, students reading at grade level in third grade is an important benchmark and an important predictor, as is the ACT score in 10th grade. And I'm thinking that the target score is 22 or 23. So, we have some markers that we're trying to get kids to those standards. And then when we find that kids are not meeting those standards, we've got to have interventions in place, and formal interventions, not interventions where students are invited and they can choose to come or not come.
It's a big part of CVTC has they have a prepared learner program for the students that simply are not, so that delays their entrance. And term that I often hear is that when you perform to a certain level, you'll be set free to do the things you want to do. And some of our students don't have that opportunity because they're not hitting those entrance scores. When they're first trying to access post-secondary education.
Commissioner Zhang.
Okay, your first demographic and trends, race, ethnicity graph.
The one with lots of colors?
Yes.
All right, we're there.
Okay, so it would seem to me that the white students, we were right around the national average, but everybody else, we are not. Is that correct?
All right. I always have to go one by one on this.
Okay.
So if I follow the green line, our Asian students, they're oscillating. This is a little bit above 70, going down below 60 here, so back up to 70. Again, the Asian number here is 80.5, so that number is lower. If I go to the white number, just a little under 70, coming down towards 60 and kind of, bouncing around between 60 and 70 and landing down near 60. 65.7 is their national number. So a little bit above it and then falling a little bit below it. And again, I should caution you, these are 2012 numbers, and I saw those numbers were kind of oscillating too. So it's not unusual to see an oscillation in those numbers. I was surprised at how they weren't quite as static as I would have predicted them to be across the nation, because with that large of a group of students. So you can see in that group, though, we are around that number, but falling a little bit below it recently. Do you want me to keep going?
No, because I already did it.
Yep. All right.
So we are not, our programming is not effective enough for our minority group to meet the national standards there, the national average.
Yeah,
That's what it's saying to me.
Correct. It's lower than the national average, yes.
Okay.
Follow-up concern about that. In 2005, we had 85% of white students. In 2013, it's now at 80. That means there are 8% differences. If we operate at the same way we have been, and not looking at a child at the holistic approach, we continue to design curriculum, provide curriculum that accommodate the majority, and not responding to the individual needs. Individual, in this case, we see that the ethnic students' numbers are increasing. In the long run, we see a pattern that is dropping, like Commissioner Shong just pointed out.
And this pattern is similar across, the Wisconsin as a whole has a similar pattern like this compared to the nation.
It doesn't mean we in Eau Claire
correct.
are
I'm just saying
excused
that,
not to do
yep,
better.
I'm giving you more data, not rationalization.
But ultimately, the question is, what are the explanatory factors that are impacting that trend? For all I know, it's poverty. You know, certainly educational programming can help, but there's certainly external factors that we may or may not have an effect on. So, we'll have to know. I don't know.
And I also understand that it's hard because we can't access that part because, you know, we're not doing this federally.
Mm-hmm.
But you can kind of extrapolate based on what you're seeing in terms of how our poverty rate has grown.
Double.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Commissioner Johnson.
I recall that we had made an attempt to survey students after they had graduated. Has there been any more effort to do that, or was it just so hard to reach them that we?
Yeah, it is. It is very hard to reach them. As a matter of fact, we just have re-engaged the K-12 Insight in terms of 2 other surveys. One is the senior exit survey. It's coming to you too, by the way. Take it when you get it. And the other is our graduates. We have to find a different way, just like with our family survey, of trying to get, because those numbers were down, depending on the graduating year, because we did them at 1, 5, and 10 years. Those were down like at, I think, like 2 to 5%. I mean, they were really, really low numbers. And so we have to figure out a different way to try to reach out to that group. Because right now, one of the things we've been doing in the survey, which you're all taking this week, right, is having the graduates put in their email addresses so we can at least find a way to connect with them. So make sure you put that in there.
Well, I would say that we should go to them where they're at and reach them on social media. Because certainly they'll share it through, you know, Twitter and whatever else they're doing next year. But in those questions, I mean, it's easy to say 3rd grade reading, 8th grade math, number of credits, because those are easy things to measure. And I would like to know, you know, and I know it's harder to ask the right questions and get answers from them, but what really prepares them, especially the kids who decide to go 2 years or 4 years or 6 or 8 years after they graduate? You know, what sorts of experiences or personal characteristics do they have that, you know, encourage them to go? And how do they define success? You know, maybe we define success as graduating from a post-secondary education institution. Maybe they don't. Maybe they define it as, you know, I earn an income that supports me, or I have a well-balanced life, or, you know, any number of things. So I hope we don't get hooked, because reading and math and college graduation are easy to measure, that's the measure that we use to decide whether we're successful for our students.
Commissioner Hammack-Boyle.
Wendy, your point's well taken. I think the soft pieces of all of this has to be part of the conversation as well. Thank you for that.
Okay, well, thanks very much, Jim. I think the graphs are cool. All right, next on our agenda is policy 345.6, graduation requirements. It's pretty short. We can put that up here. Did P&G work, Commissioner Hammack-Boyle, P&G worked on that today, correct? Okay, maybe we can pull that up. Sure. So today we have the option of doing a first reading if it looks okay to board members. But first, let's see if there's any questions. What was the main purpose? Could you explain maybe, Commissioner Hammack-Boyle, what the purpose of the change was? What drove it, so everyone's aware? Okay, I don't know. I don't want to put you on the spot. But.
Well, Marion, do you want to take that?
You want to do this?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
okay.
I'm trying to get out of this PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah. I mean, we just knew it needed to be reworded and reworked, and it's just restated in a different way.
I just wasn't sure if there's a legal reason to change it or what the driving force was, just so we're all aware. Years old is a good reason.
Yeah, we have a lot of work to do on that committee.
Excuse me. So as we looked at the graduation requirement, it is, as Commissioner Johnson pointed out, it is quite old, and we felt that it needed to be updated in terms of an update on the rules as well, with the changing graduation requirements from the state, and with the addition of the additional math credit and the additional half credit in science. We thought this was a good time to update the policy.
And we really wanted the rules to be dictated and worked on by the people that are Dr. Hardebeck and the administration and staff, as opposed to having those pieces within the policy. So that was also talked about.
Okay. Commissioner Johnson.
I was surprised that it was so brief and non-comprehensive both before, and I mean it's more comprehensive now, but so if the specific number of credits and total number of credits are all in the rules, that those are decisions that wouldn't rise to the board level if
Yes, that's exactly correct, because the people that we hire and the people that are in the trenches and the people that run this district are very knowledgeable in those pieces.
Said rather directly. Okay, that's good. I'm glad you said that. Any comments or questions about this or concerns, other concerns? Okay, so I think we're ready for a first reading if everyone's agreeable to that. Okay, would someone volunteer to do a first reading of this, please? I read the whole
I
was going to volunteer for that.
Oh, okay. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm going to read it off the screen, so here goes. The school board awards diplomas to recognize those students who have met district-established requirements for high school graduation. The superintendent and high school principal shall be responsible for the general supervision and management of the graduation of students under this policy. The district's general student non-discrimination policy applies in all respects to the methods, practices, and materials used for determining the graduation status of students. The administration will promulgate, love that word, administrative rules and regulations to implement this policy.
Okay, thank you. So we'll bring this next time for resolution to vote on. Okay, great. All right, I think our last piece for tonight is we had before the calendar committee, a discussion about school start times, and we had asked them to, come forward with some recommendation or things to recommend for the board, how we should move through this. So go ahead, Kay.
Thanks. So we have both James Martin and myself are presenting tonight on behalf of the calendar committee. And as you can see up on the screen is the, again, 23 members of the calendar committee who you've seen numerous times in the past several months. Back in November of 14, the board charged the calendar committee to make a preliminary recommendation to whether or not we should be looking to commission a study of school day start times. And that's what prompted the work of this committee that brings us to this point tonight. So in summary of the committee's work, there were multiple meetings that took place with the committee members in which during that time we took the opportunity to review research and literature associated with the switching of start times or the modification of start times in a school district. The input and discussion that the committee had revolved around creating a large document which summarized in kind of picking apart each of those pieces of literature and research and identifying what the positives of that information was, as well as areas that we thought needed more investigation if the board should choose to move forward. There was also a presentation to the PAC committee back in November, in which at that point in time this idea was received positively in terms of moving forward. We also had principal and DLT input throughout this process, where we talked about the potential of having a commission to investigate the start times, and both of those entities indicated that they felt it would be a positive step to move forward. And then, of course, student transit. Student transit has indicated to us that a modification of start times is possible. Of course, it's going to come at a price, but it's something that the district can do. So that was the beginning of all of the work for the committee. So the next couple slides are the research and literature that the committee reviewed. I'm not going to read all of this for you verbatim, but I'll just read the titles of the documents that we reviewed. So the first one was Insufficient Sleep in Adolescents and Young Adults, an update on causes and consequences. So that was one of the first ones we looked at. And then Teens Need to Start School Later was the second. The third one that we investigated was School Start Time Change, an in-depth examination of school districts in the United States. And then average start times for public high schools and percentage distribution of start times in public high schools by selected school characteristics. So that was pretty detailed about some data. Sounds like something that Jim Schmidt would have been excited to look at. Sleep deprivation may be undermining teen health, and then examining the impact of later high school start times on the health and academic performance of high school students, a multi-site study. And I believe that's one that all the board members have had for a couple of months already. Mm-hmm. Yep, that's the Minnesota one.
Okay, are these linked anywhere? I didn't see these in our board docs.
I'm working with Patty to be able to get these uploaded to board docs so that you have access to them.
And I guess you're reading the titles, but for people in the public and who might be listening online, the articles you're looking at were from the American Medical Association, the American Pediatric Association, the U.S. Department of Education. So, it wasn't just that you pick some articles that fit, what you were looking to find. Exactly. Because you can find articles that will say anything, but these were from very reputable sources.
Very reputable sources, quality information, and kind of as you're saying, it's not something that we just went out on Facebook and found an article that supported what it was we were looking for. So the pages are stuck together. So this next couple of slides is just a summary of some of the high points of the review of that information. Obviously, it's not everything because there's so much information that was included, but some of the high points that we pulled out in terms of the committee's work for this is bulleted here. So studies show that running schools at developmentally appropriate hours improves health, academic performance, and results in teenagers getting more sleep. Another highlight was potential grant monies available for districts that look to implement a change in start times. This was a particular article that indicated there was monies available back in 1998 for a grant called Z's to A's. So the point of including this is just to indicate that should the board commission a committee to move forward to study this, that we'd want to look at whatever resources are available to assist the district in implementing something like this, because it does come with a hefty price tag. So we thought it was important to include that. Positive findings: reduction in car crashes, less absenteeism and tardies, improved academic performance, and clear benefits for health, depression, and use of caffeine and other substances. In one of the studies, it showed that 5 out of 6 high schools showed significant increases in their GPAs. Districts found that more students participated in athletics and teams performed better, which I think is the reverse of what people think would happen under this situation and scenario. So the committee found that to be an interesting point. Indicated that the middle school students perform better in terms of attention and concentration, and studies focused on the social, emotional advantages for students in addition to the academic advantages, which the committee had discussion about in terms of this not just being about test scores, but we're talking about looking at putting something in place that would affect the whole child. So, this one's still mine. So, again, in summary of the committee work, the committee believes that the district should continue to pursue the investigation of school start times, due in part to the research that I just spoke about, and the potential to create positive change for students academically, emotionally, and physically. So with that, I'll turn it over to James.
Good evening. James Martin, Technology Coordinator at DeLong Middle School, as well as other elementaries, and the chairperson for the Labor Relations with the Eau Claire Association of Educators. Picking up where Kay left off, we studied, in looking at all those various articles, one of the articles that seemed to have the most comprehensive review was titled "The Blueprint for," get the exact title, School Start Time Change and In-Depth Examination of School Districts in the United States, the Children's National Medical Center's Blueprint for Change Team. It was released on April 15th, 2014, and it's one of the articles that will be uploaded and available on board docs that Kay mentioned. Coming out of looking at that, there were many things that they said as they studied other implementations across the nation that we should really focus on to make sure that we have a successful, or to help us have a successful transition if we move forward on this. And one of the most important pieces was the importance of leadership. And it highlighted how the districts that seemed to have been most successful really had buy-in from the superintendent, the district staff, the school board. All had become well informed with sleep science information and had reached out to key community organizations and were working to address the logistical challenges and to make sure that they promoted the benefits of student health, safety, and academic and athletic performance. So really the summary of it is we need buy-in at the top, and we can help deliver, that will help deliver it to the community and deliver it out to the district as a whole. Another item then was the education of the entire community, and that focused on that there needs to be this sort of comprehensive conversation with our community so that we are educating them about the pros, some of the cons, acknowledging the cons, and making sure that we're out in front of their concerns so that they know that we're trying to do this for the best interest of the students first and foremost. Consensus building of the stakeholders, reaching out to all of the various stakeholders throughout the entire, not just the parents, but the students also. Community members and community organizations that have connections to our district are important that we reach out to, and we develop this spirit of partnership in working with them. We also made sure we highlighted that the transportation costs might be a logistical issue. We have an estimate from the student transportation that the cost could be, again an estimate, $540,000 above and beyond our current contract with them. So that's something that, again, the school board would have to take a look at and see, are we ready to work toward that and build it into future budgets and maintain that. The athletics and the community use of recreational facilities, shifting times, certainly will have significant ripple effects within our athletic program, as well as Parks and Rec and other community uses of our facilities. One size does not fit all. The key piece that came out of that was focused there is you can look at all the plans that are out there. In the end, you need to look at your community, look at your school, your staff, your students, your parents, and figure out how you need to custom design the implementation for you. The prioritizing of sleep health as an important corollary to school start time change. What this highlighted in their poll out was sometimes parents and students may not take advantage of this additional time. And so there's, again, an educational piece to make sure that they are taking advantage of this, and that the district itself doesn't sort of sabotage some of this by focusing on early bird classes or early practice times, which really all we're doing is shifting time commitments and asking students to do what we just said they shouldn't be doing. So we need to be conscious of that and make sure that we're educating our parents, our coaches, our own programs to make sure that we don't step on ourselves when we're doing this. Adjustments take time. The highlight there was that it does take time, and that we need to continue those conversations and be ready to get out in front of misinformation or miscommunications and have this conversation that helps bring people along and recognize that we need time to do all of the right planning to try and make sure that we have a smooth implementation process. And then finally, the piece that I highlighted there was the anticipation is often worse than the reality. And this was that, you know, it's part of change management, and that really is what stresses a lot of people out. And they highlighted in successful places that a lot of the concerns that were raised leading up to this never actually materialized. And so there was a lot of excitement about issues and concerns, but when they really got and pushed this forward, they were either addressed successfully or they turned out not to be as significant as some people had suggested they'd be. But in the end, I'd circle back to those first two pieces, the importance of the leadership and the education of the entire community. They highlighted that it's important that the district have a comprehensive plan to communicate and have outreach efforts, and that they need to focus on those pieces. So again, it's a commitment by the board, commitment by our administration to say we're ready to invest time and resources into this. That gets us to the recommended time frame that the committee looked at. So you can look at, and this is something that would obviously be modified if you commissioned a study. This was our first draft of what things we thought would look right based upon the studies that we looked at. How many months does it take to have those conversations, to get the resources in place, to try and anticipate the ripple effects, to find the stakeholders, educate ourselves, develop the partnerships with perhaps your local medical industry or facilities to talk about the sleep deprivation and the advantages of good, healthy sleep patterns for students. 20 to 26 months is what we saw as a consistent sort of, it takes time to make this work. So that's where if we look out at a timeline that's 20 to 26 months from start to finish, the implementation time would be September 2018. The alternate to that is to move things a little bit faster and compress things into a 13 to 17 month time frame. The steps between option A and option B are identical. So there's a study time where we create that committee and we bring the stakeholders together, determine feasibility. Then there's the whole seeking the input from the key community stakeholders. Then there's the planning time, creating the task force, actually putting the action plan together, making sure again that we're educating the community along the way, and then the actual carrying out of the plan. How much time do we have to actually implement the plan so we're ready for things to roll smoothly? And how much additional load will that be on our staff, leadership, the board, as they're championing this or helping with the conversations with the community? How much time and energy do we have available to try and move this forward? So again, just to jump back and forth between these two, option A, which the committee thought was the best way forward, was, and is their recommendation, is this 20 to 26 month time frame. And option B, recognizing that if this was a priority and other things were going to be adjusted accordingly, to add this, to make this work and make this help this to be smooth to the community and to the staff and the parents and the students, that to compress things down and shoot for a September 2017 start date. So again, same steps, just different amounts of time to do the work. So the recommendation in the end is to pursue, the committee does recommend that you pursue a study to modify the start times. And again, we stress using the lessons that we learned from looking at the research and from other districts to successfully implement and change the school start times. The committee believes that to be respectful of all the individuals involved, that the board consider other obligations of the key stakeholders and the complexity of the work proposed when they determine if we move forward and what the implementation date would be. Which leaves us with what we would ask of you as you reflect and discuss. Which, our recommendation is to move forward, but we request from you that you determine the following. Are we committed to moving forward? And if so, what's the end date so we can figure out the workload and adjust and start working toward your goal?
Thanks, James. Before I get to you, Mr. Johnson, just what you're recommending a different committee than calendar committee.
Yes.
Just to be clear.
That is correct.
Yes. Commissioner Johnson.
Well, I would point out that number one's already been answered back in November. I made a motion, and Charles Vu seconded my motion to direct the calendar committee to commission a study of school start times. So we already voted on that in November. That's already been answered. We just voted 2 weeks ago to add 20 minutes to the day and take away 8 instructional days for students without any community-wide committee to study the impact of it. And we said, next year, you're going to get 8 more days of daycare, and your kids are going to be in school 20 more minutes, and the bus company's going to figure it out for September. So 5 years later to find out we should take another 2.5 years to do it, I think it's a bunch of hooey.
Okay. Noted. Other comments about this? You are right. We did have that motion, especially on number one. Other comments, questions on the ideas here? I first want to thank you for all this. I'm glad you looked at all the research. Some of those pieces some of those papers I had not seen before. So I look forward to seeing those. Before I make any comments on that, just a question. Some of the options that I've seen are a little softer than switching times, like shifting times or giving an optional first hour for high school students. Did you guys look at any of that very much, or because that could affect timeline and other stuff?
Sure. The specifics of how we would do it or what exactly we would do, we didn't get into that. It was, is there evidence that this is the right thing to do, and would we suggest that we move forward on that? And that would be something that we would say yes. Our recommendation is we move forward on this, and then the specifics coming out of those conversations that the next committee would have as they study the research, look at the impact of the cost, perhaps accelerate the timeline if that was the direction of the board.
Okay. Okay, so I don't see anyone else making comments. Go, Commissioner Hammack-Boyle.
Well, as far as the student transit piece, as I read through their information here, they did say that as they look at increasing the cost for the district, they also found that they needed to create greater efficiencies for themselves. So the cost that is connected with this, and you already alluded to that, James, is that it's an estimate. So that certainly would be a great conversation on how they could make this work at the least amount of cost, right? Yeah.
So in terms of the timing, for my personal, everyone knows I'm very much in support of changing start times. So number one's for me a no-brainer, and your calendar committee has confirmed that it's something we should look at. So I'm all for that. For number two, one of my concerns is we've got 3 committees already, which consists of a number of staff looking at compensation. If we decide to go for a referendum next spring, we're going to have a lot of community conversations about that. So I'm actually a little bit worried about putting too much at once on our plate, frankly. So despite I really want start times to happen. It won't happen before my daughter leaves school, but I am a little afraid of overloading the district. So that's kind of where I'm at with number 2. And I think unless, the costs were like part of the referendum or something where we had to talk about it, then maybe sooner. But otherwise, I would be leaning toward a little longer. So others.
Even if it was, I was thinking we could tie some of that conversation with the community and relative to the referendum conversation as well. So your point's well taken.
Yeah,
but
if we do it, yeah.
Yeah, but again, I know it's something that people want done right away, but there's a huge piece we're doing now with the compensation study as well. So,
Commissioner Zhang.
I want it done, but I want it done right as well. And if the committee is saying that the option A is going to be more effective in implementing this, I tend to want to lean towards that, just because we also have all of this other stuff coming down. But I do want this to happen.
Could you vote?
I'm not ready to say anything. I want to see this information before the meeting today, which I did not see.
The slides and the research that was that they presented today.
Correct. I can't comment enough today.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So I think probably we'll talk about agenda setting, but there's a consensus that we would like to look into this. I think the question is, how should we implement it? How should we get community input? So my guess is probably the route we'll do, maybe we'll talk about agenda setting next, is set up a board committee discussion again on this, to just on that implementation. Maybe we can come forward with some proposals. But since, for example, Commissioner Vu would like to read about it more and can't even comment yet on it, we may just have to set up another discussion at committee, board committee, to figure out that implementation and give the board a little, at least the leadership, myself, a little more guidance on how to go through with this. And I would like to dig in and think about some of the things James presented on those items to think about. That couple slides ago I thought was really, really good. That was really good to think about how we would do this. And it's going to take some thought on that. So my guess is we'll have another committee meeting on this. Go ahead, Commissioner Hammack-Boyle.
Could it be something we could tackle at a work session?
Perhaps that might make sense. We've been trying to do those for more strategic planning, and but that would tie in somewhat with our community conversation questions. So I have to think about that, but perhaps, yeah. Okay. I forgot for all of these committee reports, I forgot if there's any public comment on these. I always, unless I have it on my agenda, I forget. But is there any public comments on the start times reports? Do we have any on that? Okay. And I missed some of the others. If anyone has a comment on the data report, for example, they can certainly speak. Okay. Okay. So is the board okay with us just talking about agenda setting, thinking about where to set it next as a committee report, and as a committee discussion again, hopefully soon, maybe we'll come up with some ideas. Commissioner Johnson?
Well, since question number 1 was already answered, perhaps the committee could at least start in their, 2 to 10 month planning phase, so that we don't lose additional time.
My problem is we don't have a committee. It's not the calendar committee. We're going to commission a different committee. That was the main thing. What should the committee look like? Who should it be? And when, and what's their charge? That's really the issue right here, I think, and how long they take.
And why can't it be the calendar committee? We've got a brand new calendar. Clearly, there's not going to be any changes to that. Well, maybe there is. I guess I don't know. But if they've got no other major work, why wouldn't it be with them?
I don't know. We can talk about that.
Because they're on other committees as
So,
well.
so it's workload for the people on those committees. Well, I'm not sure we're...
Staff or administrators? Staff. Well, we've got 1,000 staff. Perhaps we need to recruit some people to volunteer for committees, and so they're not overloaded with more than one.
And that, I think that's part of the logistical work that James was referring to in the planning piece of it. We have... we have the compensation committees, we have all of those, it's maybe perhaps strategic planning going on. So we have one executive director of HR who's going to have to play a big part in that, as well as some of our other administrators. And we may have a number of teachers who are, in that mix who want to contribute to the committee as well. I just think we're going to have to look at the logistics and see what we can figure out.
Superintendent, would you be comfortable giving a recommendation on who should be on this kind of committee? Not necessarily the timeline, because you want input from us on that. Would you be okay with that? That would be nice to give us a kind of a structure of what this committee would look like. Okay, that would be good. So we can come forward with that at a committee meeting again, discuss that, see if that's the kind of committee we want, and then we can discuss some more the timeline and the charge and how that might go. How does that sound? We'll do that. Okay? Okay, and we'll at least have some structure to it. And we'll have a chance to study some of this some more. James, I want to thank you and Kay for presenting this and all the work on the calendar committee. And we thank the whole calendar committee for us. I appreciate it very much. Any future agenda items from the board? No? Okay. All right. So no other business, so I will take a motion to adjourn. Accept a motion. So move. We have a motion from Commissioner Zhang.
Second.
We have a second, Commissioner Vu. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, we are adjourned. Good meeting. Thank you tonight. Thank you for all the great information and the reports.
This program was recorded and presented by Chippewa Valley Community Television. Chippewa Valley Community Television is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, you can contact us by calling 715-839-5067 or on the web at www.cbctv.org.